Okay, welcome to this podcast. So this is our weekly Chen Chat podcast. So the date today is the 16th of June, 2025, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. So I had a chat with Chen this morning, as I do kind of before these podcasts, just to get some idea of the agenda of something that he's quite keen to talk about. So he said, right, today we're going to talk about AI. AI is quite a big conversation, I think. I think most people are sort of talking about and seeing different types of AI kind of coming forward. So we wanted to kind of talk about it from my perspective, first of all, really. And then as we normally do, the second part of this chat, Ken will come in full trance mode, obviously, and then he'll talk about AI, artificial intelligence from his perspective. So I'm just going to open the comments up. So anyone that's around that wants to join in and have a quick chat or ask questions whilst I'm talking, then please do so. I'm sure Jane from downstairs will pop in to keep an eye on what's going on. Vanessa's here, so hi to Vanessa. Good to see you. Okay, really, so just wait for a few people to join. So really, from my perspective, AI really, we're seeing AI on a kind of daily basis now. I think there probably aren't too many people that haven't heard of artificial intelligence and kind of what that means, really. I think all the new phones, new technology, everything new has AI kind of built in by standard. And a lot of the new browsers also have AI. So you can use AI to ask questions. You can use AI to write things for you as well, which is quite a kind of step forward, really. So if you're creating content and you're a content creator, in the old world, really, you'd have to do some research, probably go off to Google. Before that, of course, it would have been books and some hard research, but then it was kind of Google, so you could Google things. You could find out information from other people, from other people's websites. Again, Google would provide a good cross-section of information from a variety of different platforms, really. So that was the kind of old method to find out information. And of course, now we've got to a point that we're talking to AI. So we've got to a point that websites have chatbots on, and those chatbots generally, our own website has a chatbot on. So basically, to make that work and engage it, of course, you need to give it the answers to the questions that people are likely to come up with. And that generally means you need to write a document. So you need to think about writing down the answers to content. And obviously, if you're running courses, if you're teaching, doing the things that we do, then obviously we've written a document with a whole load of content that you then upload to an AI bot effectively. And then when someone kind of lands on your website, if they engage with the AI bot, down on the bottom right, the chat bot, you can ask it questions. When is the next course? How much do courses cost? Who is Andy Poulter? Who is Chen? So, of course, the AI bot then uses the content that you've previously created to provide the answers in what tends to be quite a good in interactive narrative, really, I guess. So it's quite a good way for people to find out more information. And I know for myself, like everyone these days, we're all very busy. So if I land on a website that I'm interested in the old world, of course, we would start to click around. You look at the menu, you look at the different pages on the website. You might sort of hover over the home page for probably 2 or 3 minutes, I guess, engaging in and reading some of the content. And then you'd go off, clicking links, looking at different things. But for most of us, I think probably it's safe to say attention span is quite short for most people because there's so much content available and we're generally quite busy. So for a website, you'd probably get 5 or 6 minutes of someone landing on that site, looking at content, trying to find out the things that they're interested in or not interested in, of course, as well, really. And it was by chance, really. So our website's quite big. We've probably got a couple of 100 pages that have been created probably over the course of 15 years. I mean, even I can't find things on my own website these days. Jane will say, have we got this information on the website? And I think, yeah, probably, but I can't then find the page that has that on because there's lots and lots of pages. We've got a lot of content about entities and curses and all of the things that we talk about. In the past, we've written pages and pages and documented a lot of content, but trying to find the content is quite difficult. But of course, in this new world, really, you can go to a website like ours, you can then interact with a bot basically and ask the bot questions and you can get the answers back really quickly. So rather than 5 or 6 minutes or 10 minutes on a website, you can now interact probably in 30 seconds and find out what you're really interested in. And then, of course, like a kind of bee, you just disappear off to another flower, really, and another website or another another piece of content of interest. So AI has kind of made it easier for us to do those things. But of course, on the other side of the coin, it's created by us, effectively by humans, because of course it's code that's running. So it's kind of from a spiritual perspective, I guess, really, our AI is kind of, artificial intelligence is a tool really that kind of mirrors, I guess, human conscious awareness and kind of our collective intent, and probably the current state of our kind of spiritual evolution, it would be fair to say. So I guess if we're looking at AI from a kind of IT content, people have to write the code. So we've got coders that sit there, write the code, and of course the code, AI is able to self-learn to a certain degree, but of course it's given core code to start with. So depending upon your bias, if you're writing the code, you of course can bias the answers in different ways. And I guess this is the kind of concerned area that we all think about really from a spiritual and I guess psychological perspective, that when we're actually interacting with AI bots, we need to think about the code that's been written and where that code comes from and who wrote the code and what they're going to give you. Are they going to give you the content that's really true? Is the content going to be biased in one way or another? And of course, is there any fake news aspect to those things that come forward? Because if we're only interacting with AI bots, again, we've got no way to really sort of quantify where that information's coming from, who's behind the information, and actually whether we kind of absorb it and we run with it or whether we don't in that way. So I'm just going to say hi to Geraldine. Good to see you. And Kira's here too, as usual. Thanks for joining, Kira. Also, Ashley. Hi, Ashley and Liz. So good to see you guys on the podcast. If you've got questions about AI whilst I'm talking, then pop them in the chat. So really, from my perspective, I guess we need to think about these concepts. Really, that AI is created by human beings, and it reflects the level of consciousness or the awareness of the people that created it effectively. And that kind of dovetails in, really, I guess, with the ethics, the kind of values, any biases, the intentions of the programmer and the programming into the AI system. It's mirrored back to us when we collectively look at the spiritual aspect and the spiritual path. So if we're unconscious or we're kind of disconnected, AI is going to express that to us. If we're operating from a place of unity and compassion and wisdom and love, then AI can be used in service, really, from a higher good perspective. So I guess, again, like everything, it all depends upon kind of how we think about things and how AI moves forward. And because it's relatively new to all of us, we're all kind of involved in AI to a certain degree. And I know certainly from our website, we review the content. When people go onto the website and they interact with the AI bot, we then get to see the activity. So we can see what people write, the questions that they're asking of the AI bot. And that means we can then provide more information and more detail behind the scenes, so the next person that comes along gets a more integrated conversation with the AI bot. So it's kind of quite a good way to do things. But of course, it is this kind of level of continual development. As with everything, really, we're moving things forward and trying to do that in a good way. So hi to Jane. She's a bit late. The dog reminded her he hadn't been fed. And of course, the dog tends to come first in our house, as they do in most people's houses, really. So if the dog's hungry, that comes before the podcast. Hi to Jordan as well, who's just joined. So really, so AI for me is this kind of catalyst for kind of soul and self-reflection. So it does raise, obviously, spiritual questions. So kind of what does it mean to be human is one of the questions that I would consider to think about. And also, when we think about AI, it's a code. It's been written as a code, but AI is quite advanced these days, and it's like a self-learning tool. So AI programs are writing themselves and developing themselves, and again, based upon the content and the people that are creating them. So we could ask the question, really, I guess, could a machine have awareness of a soul? Because obviously we know that we have a soul, we have a spiritual aspect to us, but an AI bot and code, can it do that? And can it get to that point, really, in its development? And then we can talk about conscious awareness, really. Consciousness, can it be replicated? So our consciousness, we know we have a subconscious part of us that we know is turned on and active when we go to sleep. It keeps us breathing. We go into dream states and we do all sorts of things when we're dreaming. And then when we wake up, our conscious mind clicks in, the subconscious clicks off or goes into the background. And we then start to think about our day, the things that we've got planned, the things that we're doing. But of course, the memories of the dreams that you've had disappear really quickly as that conscious awareness takes over from the self-conscious or subconscious that's been engaged whilst we've been sleeping. So it's quite an interesting aspect from that perspective, really. So some of the questions I was thinking about just before this kind of podcast really is what is the nature of a soul? What is a spirit? What is divine intelligence? And how do we kind of encourage spiritual growth through inquiry? And whether that inquiry is with AI or not, I guess, is a different thing. So, so from that perspective, it does bring up those conversations. And I guess AI is a tool really for awakening and distraction. I mean, it could awaken us. It can distract us, of course. So spirituality, technology is neutral really from that perspective. It can serve the light, it can serve the shadow. So it can help us connect across distances as we're kind of doing today. So we're using technology to connect, to talk, to engage. We can use AI to automate, I think, a lot of our mundane tasks that we don't really want to do. I know from my perspective, again, from a website point of view, having an AI bot on there is really helpful and can integrate quite nicely into the business that we offer, connecting to it from a spiritual perspective. And of course, AI can also facilitate healing, learning, and kind of deeper insights for us all, really. But it depends how we use it and how we integrate it into our lives is the biggest question, I think, really. But of course, on the other side of the coin, AI can become a big distraction. And of course, it can sedate the spiritual aspect of us with overstimulation, which we all kind of find these days. We're being overstimulated with so much content that we're struggling, I guess, to quantify. We don't know what's real anymore, what's kind of fake news, what's real news. We look at videos, and we know that AI can create videos now that for the normal user, we're not sure, we're not really able to deliberate what's actually perceivable as true and what's kind of not true. So I mean, I've seen quite a lot of videos, as I'm sure most people have, on Facebook and TikTok and things, and they look credible, but you know that they're AI generated and therefore they're not actually real, but they could kind of be put forward as being real. And of course, that takes us into quite dangerous territory, really, whereby we're not able to deliberate between reality and a lack of reality to a certain degree. So I think we can get disconnected from nature. We can have this over-reliance too as well, really, on external answers. I know that is one of the bigger concerns for AI, is that, again, when we start to question AI, we ask it for answers, and we take the answers it gives us as the Bible truth. But of course, if AI has been programmed to be biased with the answers it gives, then obviously that takes us off down a kind of different path, which is one that we're probably not so keen to go down, certainly from a spiritual perspective, really. So the impact depends on our intention and our awareness, I think, from my perspective. So we've got to kind of raise the questions about what's artificial, what's divine intelligence. There's a clear difference and distinction really between artificial intelligence and what we kind of call divine intelligence, because AI is built on code and logic, programming, whereas divine intelligence is intuition, it's timeless, we're connecting ourselves to kind of the source of creation, really. So a spiritual aligned person may use AI as a helper to help us in our day-to-day, but we also need to rely on that inner guidance, and that's what we all teach, and that's what we're all trying to do. All of us are on a spiritual path of trying to stay connected to our spirit guides, to that spiritual part of us that gives us that kind of divine intelligence, I guess, and our dream state. And we're trying to stay connected to source, effectively spiritual source, as the ultimate authority, and not to give over to AI. So again, we've got quite a lot of questions that are coming up. And I think this was one of the reasons that Chen was quite keen to talk about AI today, really, because there are, certainly we see a lot of questions coming in from people about how AI is affecting them in their lives, our opinions, and do we agree or disagree with the use of AI. So I think that's probably part of the reason we thought this would be a good topic of conversation to kind of cover, really. So I guess AI really is an opportunity for conscious co-creation from a spiritual evolution perspective and standpoint. AI kind of represents humanity's growing ability to kind of co-create with spiritual laws, universal law. But the question is, will we use AI in the power of alignment and with the greater good, or for control or separation? And I guess that is the kind of question, really. So spiritually awakened people are going to be calling to infuse AI development with higher ethics and higher wisdom, kind of creating systems that support healing, education, peace and balance. And that, I think, is where my perspective comes into the AI conversation, really, is any tool that we can use that kind of augments the way that we teach, the way that we work, the way that we connect to each other, is obviously a good thing, but there's obviously a negative side that we have to be kind of aware of and talk about too, really. So AI is a kind of powerful mirror, I think, and tool. It kind of reflects the state of humanity's consciousness. It holds a lot of promise, really, to assisting our evolution, I think, as kind of individuals, but only if it's kind of guided by spirit, and from my perspective, really spirit-led intention with kind of ethical awareness and kind of a heart-centered wisdom would be good. So that's kind of my take on where we are with AI. I'm just going to read some of the questions you guys are prompting. So Ash is talking about, as someone who's been learning disabilities and values AI, how can we make sure we're protected and doing AI right? And that's, I guess, the question. Actually, really, that is the thing. How do we know we're doing it right? And again, this is where I think we need to be very connected to our guides, connected to ourselves from a kind of spiritual perspective, and connected to our spiritual truth. You know, I know that when we teach meditation and we teach spiritual development, a lot of the meditations that I tend to do, you know, we connect, we ground ourselves and we connect to Mother Earth, and then we connect top end, we open our crown chakra and we connect to what I tend to call core conscious awareness. So that is a kind of vibratory frequency of core conscious awareness, but we never connect to a being, we never connect to an entity, we don't connect to anything that has a name. So we're just connecting to a vibratory frequency, which is the way that I see it, really, as a pool of core conscious awareness. So it's trying to make sure that we can deliberate, so we're still connected to spirit, but we're kind of using our AI in a positive way, kind of moving forward, really. Okay, so let's see, he's talking about the topic, which is good. Jordan saying thanks for clearing. Okay, thanks for that, Jordan. Okay, Lisa's saying spinal let me at work. Okay, I'm glad you're at work. Keep working whilst you're listening, which is good. So we're keen to connect with you guys in any way that you can, really. So I think from my perspective, that's kind of my background on AI, really, and my kind of understanding of where we are, the fact that we're using it as a tool. Obviously, Jane kind of pushed back on the AI ChatGPT conversation for quite some time. I used to come downstairs and say, there's this thing called ChatGPT that I've just started to find out about. And Ollie, to be fair, my son kind of guided me into that and said, you need to be using this, Dad. I was like, nah, we do it all ourselves, Ollie. It's all coming out of us, really. And he was like, no, this is really good. You need to at least investigate it. And then I think, like everyone that investigates ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools, you start to realize they are quite powerful and they're good. But again, they're good because they're driven by you. So you question them and you know the answers that you're looking for. And if AI gives you the right answers back and the answers that you agree with and the content that you agree with, then of course it's a positive thing. So we've started to obviously create a lot of posts that we went out on Facebook and social media. And I'd sit up here for hours really talking to Chen and writing things down. And there was a lot of time being kind of consumed to create content that, again, you're not really sure how many people get to see really from a social perspective, because we kind of know Facebook pushes posts out to a number of people, and then if you get kind of engagement, it continues to push that post out. But if people don't engage in different ways or the timing's wrong, then that post just kind of dies a death really in the social media graveyard, really, as I tend to call it. So if you put a lot of time and effort into something, you're not really sure on how much interest there's going to be. And I think this is where ChatGPT and other things come in quite well. That again, you can question, you give me the top 10 spiritual topics that people would be interested to hear about. And ChatGPT goes off and comes back with the answers. Here's the top 10. And we can think, okay, these I agree with, some of them maybe not, but maybe at the top 10, maybe 7 of them, I think are credible replies and answers from AI. And then we kind of feed that into our agenda in terms of what we do and how we do things. And then Jane will produce content, basically, and images based upon that. So AI is kind of working with us and helping us, but we're obviously overseeing it continually, and we're picking the bits that we like and we're dropping the bits that we don't like. I think that's the key for all of us, is having that discernment between, is this something that I really think is the right narrative to be talking about? Certainly if you're pushing it out on social media, on your channels, then you have to have the authenticity behind where it's come from, and also the fact that it's your version of things. So again, you know, it's trying to get that balance between helping you create content in a faster way to provide content to your channels, to your website, and to the people who are interested to hear the things that you're talking about, but also doing that in a kind of conscious way with some sort of deliberation and a kind of a marker point that this is our version of things. So this is AI is providing us with some words and some content, some paragraphs and things, and it's our version of things. We agree with it, we change it, we add things in, we take things out. But effectively, it's kind of a helping tool as opposed to a kind of copy and paste. It's give me some content. I like the content. I'll change it slightly. Jane will create some pictures. We pop it out on Chen pages, and people consume the content if they like it. If it doesn't resonate with them, then people don't consume it and they just drop it and kind of swipe right or swipe left, whichever way it goes, basically. But the content is moved off into the social media graveyard. And I think this is what we all kind of need to have, is that spiritual, intuitive connectedness to ourselves and to our spiritual selves, that if we're consuming content that we don't like, it doesn't resonate with us, then we must drop it, because obviously the frequency is wrong, which probably means the person that's giving it to you isn't on your frequency. So it might be their truth, it might be their understanding, it might be their words, but it's not yours. And I think that's the key, really, is finding things that are aligning with ourselves. And I do the same as you guys. I look for other people that I watch and follow and find some things interesting, some things I swipe right immediately and think, I don't agree with a thing that's been said, even though this is a spiritual influencer that's talking about different things. I personally don't agree with a lot of the content that they're pushing out, so swipe right and move on to the next one, effectively. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get Chen in to see what his opinion of AI is, where it's going and what's going on. As per usual, I have no idea what Chen's going to talk about, so we'll kind of just hand him the mic. I'm going to set my timer just to give him a timeline to work to, which you do need to do if you're working with Chen generally. So, okay, there we go. Okay, so Chen's on a 30-minute time window. It should be ample to talk about AI. So I'm going to hand over to Chen, guys. Obviously, at that point, I can't see anything that's being said in the comments. So I will catch you when I come back. Okay. Good day to you all. Thank you very much for providing me with the ability to have this narrated conversation, and obviously to connect and engage as we do on a weekly basis. So I do so enjoy these opportunities to be able to connect with everyone that, as Andrew says, has the capacity and the same frequency to assimilate the information that we talk about and we discuss in the way that we do. So this week I said to young Andrew, I would like to talk about artificial intelligence, AI, as you all know it, because of course, from my perspective, being a spiritual energy, there are different types of AI. You're all using what you term now as your programmatic artificial intelligence. As Andrew says, you're querying programs, and those programs are presented in different ways. So they could be bots on websites, they could be other ways for you to engage in an AI program. And we must remember that AI is a program. It's been written by humans generally, even though some of the AI tools may now be writing their own code behind the scenes. Ultimately, AI, in the way that you use it from a computer perspective, is code that's been written by developers in different places in the world. And of course, those different companies and those different people have different agendas. And as we know, the same as with everything in human life, everyone that makes or provides a service has an agenda. So if you produce a particular thing, a tool, something that you can use, there's an agenda behind it, because of course someone must have sat down and decided what they were going to produce and make, how they would make it, why they would make it, and what it would be used for, who would consume the product, what the consumer would look like, what the audience would look like. So there's many questions that go into producing and making everything. If you're a baker and you're making bread and you're making other bread-based products or cakes, you think about what people like to eat. And then, of course, you make that product based upon the consumption and the appetite of the people that are likely to buy and purchase the foods that you're producing. So AI is the same. It's been written by people generally, to start with, certainly. And, of course, there are always agendas behind those sorts of things. And to start with, of course, we're looking at text-based AI, but then we have visual AI. So we know now that we can go to different AI programs and they can produce imagery and they can build imagery. And of course, I watch young Jane quite often and she laughs because she's trying to find an image about something that we're discussing from our perspective, and she notices that the person has 7 fingers on their hand. The person may be looking like myself as Chen, but of course it's a 7-fingered Chen as opposed to a 5-fingered Chen. And then of course we watch her huff and puff as she has to integrate again, connect again to the AI program and try to get different wording so that there's only 5 fingers on the hand. And of course, sometimes people's faces change. So AI still is in its infancy, really, in the way that you're all using it and connecting with it. But of course, it's developing very, very quickly. And one of the things, obviously, we need to remind ourselves is that everyone around the world now that's using AI, there's a huge bank of computers behind the scenes that have to run to actually be able to run this code. And that level of computing power and processing power uses vast amounts of electricity. So, of course, you've got these huge, big supercomputer data centers now springing up all over the world that are basically consuming enormous amounts of electricity. And this, from our perspective, is why many of you may have noticed that as a collective social consciousness, you're all being pushed to reduce the amount of electricity that you use. So if we look at light bulbs and such things, there was the incandescent light bulb, the light bulb that burnt with wire. So you heated wire, wire would get white hot, it would give off light frequency. And then, of course, we had the LED, the new version of lights that came out that consumed and used a lot less power. And obviously then we've got all sorts of other things going on to reduce the consumer's electricity footprint. And from our perspective, the reason those things have been happening isn't really to reduce electricity, it's because of course electricity is still produced in the same way it was before, the same amounts of electricity being produced. My understanding of what's going on and the way that we see things from a spiritual perspective is so that these supercomputers and these huge data centers that are springing up can consume so much more power. So we have to be quite careful that we have this AI and robotic aspect of a side version of human conscious awareness that's coming forward to meet us. So many of you that are spiritual are still connecting in this way. You're still connecting to spirit guides using your intuition, and you're able to take information that's intuitive led spiritually. But of course, the vast majority of populations across the world are not able to do those things. So they're being fed information, provided information by the collective system effectively. And of course, the collective system is programmed and has an agenda in different ways. And obviously, as we know, that most collective systems that have been inhabited on planet Earth have an agenda. So you have to think about where that agenda comes from, where it's going. And this is why the AI conversation is so interesting, really, from our perspective, because, of course, AI has started off to be quite positive. You can integrate it into your lives in quite a positive way. You can communicate with it in quite a positive way. But of course, there is a more negative aspect that we need to keep an eye on as things start to move forward, and we make sure that AI doesn't take humanity down a very negative control road. And of course, at the same time that you've got AI popping up around the planet, and it's happening everywhere at the same time. So we think about things that get developed. If you think about medicine and those sorts of things, medicine and pharmaceuticals were developed in places, but the whole population of the planet didn't get access to them at the same time. It evolved over time. Different people, different places, different countries assimilated different versions of medicine and chemistry as they needed to. But what seems to have happened with AI is that one minute it's not there at all. None of you even have the concept of AI, and suddenly everyone's using it. It's on every device that you use. It's on all of your phones and your computers, your browsers, your tablets. So AI has suddenly sprung up across the whole world at the same time. And when that happens, we need to consider, how could that happen? Because, of course, it's not evolved. It hasn't evolved naturally. So it's been dropped and delivered. And then we have to think about who could be behind being able to drop the use of such tools across every country in the world at the same time, with the same amount of processing power, the same amount of information. Who programmed AI in the first place to be able to give you all of these narratives And of course, there are different versions of AI, different companies and different countries working on it. But when everything gets dropped at the same time in the same timeline, then we have to think about it and consider that seems to be slightly suspicious, really, from our perspective. And this is the conversation that I'm quite keen for all of us to have today. Not that there's any right conversation, but we need to be suspicious of some of the versions of AI that are coming forward, what they will be used for, how they will be used. And again, we have to think about the human conscious awareness. The human being is a complex energy. It has an energy field. You have a conscious awareness. You're connected to your spiritual self. But of course, if you start to allow other tools to do the thinking for you, and many jobs will obviously be cleared and removed with these AI products. If you think about, if you harness AI programs into automation and robotics, suddenly all of your fast food restaurants don't need people anymore. You can have automation and robots that run code that can do the jobs of many humans. So whilst there is the positive aspect that you're moving forward from a species perspective, there is of course the possibility that vast waves of your old world are going to have to change, and they're changing very rapidly. So we think about the coal miners of the past. Most people, most countries can remember coal mining for a time was a good job. It was a dangerous job, but it was a good job. There was always the concept that coal would always be needed, because at the time there would be coal-fired machinery. People used coal to heat their houses. Coal was used in different ways. And if you spoke to people back in the 1920s or 30s, they would never have envisaged a day that coal mines would close. But of course, as technology moved forward, different ways of creating energy popped up into the human conscious awareness. So nuclear power, electricity, lots of other things came online. And of course, that meant the end to the coal mine and the coal miner, really. And that's where we are today, is that AI and robotics connected together are going to change the way that all of you see jobs, the jobs that you can and can't do. And of course, there are vast waves of the population that probably are going to struggle to a certain degree to find jobs. So when AI starts to replace the working aspect of work and jobs, then of course people are going to struggle to have money. And we know that money is energy in the way that things work on planet Earth today. That when you go to work, you give energy, you do a job, you get paid in money, whether that's electronic finance or other types of payment. And of course, that is the self-replication and the mirror effect of energy. So you get energy back for something you did. So as AI comes in and takes over, there's going to be people that find that they can't work. There are no jobs for those sorts of people. So how will they live? How will they fund their life? What will they do? What can they do? So it's going to start to spring up some quite interesting conversations. And of course, there is a negative side. Like with all things, there's a positive side. As the human conscious awareness moves forward using AI tools, then we can see lots of new development, lots of new things happening, because AI will give you answers to things that in the past professors or people working at the forefront of their industries may have taken 2 or 3 years to come up with new developments. AI, of course, with all of this information pulled into a central pool, queried in the right way, can provide different types of inventions, different types of energy. Lots of things can move forward in a very positive way. So that's the positive aspect. But the negative aspect is, and of course this is the bit that we're starting to see, is that vast parts of society are going to become redundant. And that, of course, then breeds content, disconnection and negativity. And of course, generally when people don't feel valued, they feel depressed, they feel anxious. So there's a whole host of negative emotional feelings and understandings that are going to start to come forward. And I think this is what we're seeing. So certainly from our perspective, from a spiritual perspective, we're seeing lots and lots of people moving into this lower frequency of vibration, this anxious, depressed, undervalued feeling of not worth anything particularly. And those emotions are quite negative, and they hold the vibration down for the person. And of course, if vast amounts of people feel that same way, they can't find work, they don't have jobs, they don't have an intellectual understanding to be able to get themselves work and jobs, then of course they're moving into quite a negative place from a vibratory frequency. And that means, of course, that they're going to become angry, depressed, and negative. So there's going to be we think there'll be a separation in society. We think the spiritual people, like probably the people listening to this podcast, will go off down one path. So may use AI, may connect with AI in a positive way, but still connect and stay connected to their spiritual source. And then there's the other side of the population that will move more into the programmed aspects of AI, the more programmed aspects of robotics, that side of things. And of course, that's where the gaming side obviously is. And we see that the gaming side, people putting on glasses and going into these holographic games, disconnect themselves from who they really are. They disconnect from other people in their families. They disconnect from society. So with the advancement of AI technology and computing power, there will be this divergence between, we think, the populations. So the spiritual people go one way and the other people go the other way. And of course, that will disconnect the human person and humanity completely from each other. And that means, of course, it will become more and more evident that there are these two streams of human species, really, those that are still connected to the Mother Earth, to the planet, to the spiritual energies of the planet, to the spiritual understandings and teachings, and then those that will disconnect themselves from everything spiritual, from nature itself. And of course, these become the more urban-based people, and they will be the people that will be more easily distracted, really, and probably controlled to a certain degree. So tech will become part of their lives. And this is what we're starting to see from our perspective, from a spiritual perspective, is that IT and tech will start to be integrated into the actual human being. And this, of course, is a very dangerous area of human development, really, because when you allow computer programs to be integrated into your thought process or into your physical body through chips and other things, then of course you become controlled, because you're being controlled by the programs and the things that you're allowing into your space. And we already see this to a certain degree. Many of you wear smart devices, so people that have smart watches on. Young Andrew was speaking to me a while back and said, look, there's this really interesting smartwatch. It can do all sorts of things. So it's got a sensor in the back, so it can monitor your blood, your heartbeat. It can look at the blood flow. It can do all sorts of wonderful things. And I said, yes, that's wonderful. It's a nice tool to have. Now let's just think about what's actually happening there. So now you've got a device on your wrist, right over your pulse point, right, very, very connected, millimeters away from your veins, from your blood. So that's talking to Wi-Fi or talking to a phone or something else. So it's radiating you with a very high frequency. So Wi-Fi frequencies we know are 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz. So now you've chosen to put the device on your wrist that's basically radiating your blood continually. So even though the actual frequency isn't particularly powerful and strong, and the amplitude of the electricity isn't particularly strong, if it's on you for 8 hours a day, and people sleep with these things to monitor their sleep states, of course it's radiating your blood continually. So that's not going to go anywhere particularly good longer term. Many people may not consider that, or might consider that the benefits of having these smartwatches and devices that are actually on your body, changing your blood, changing the molecular structure, changing the amount of oxygen in your blood, a good thing. And of course that's a personal choice, but it's people being aware what they're doing and why they're doing these things. And this is where we have to look at technology moving forward. Does it give us positive benefits, or is it actually causing or creating problems from behind the scenes that people are not really told to think about, or they're not really thinking about themselves? So when you think about a device, how it works, it's running with AI, with programs, with some sort of collective awareness that's been programmed to do things for you. Is it actually working for you from a health perspective? So is there a health benefit to having something on your wrist that radiates your blood continually? From our perspective, probably not. So again, there's lots of things that we all need to start to consider and think about when we start to walk down this tech path, with AI incorporated, and certainly with robotics, because the robotics are starting to come out now, and from our perspective, we can see where this path is likely to go. And when we integrate robotics, AI, computer programs into the autonomous human system, then of course you become part of that autonomous collective, a bit like a cloud. So we know that we have lots of computers that connect, and we say we talk to the cloud or we save things to the cloud. Most people have no idea what the cloud actually is. The cloud, of course, is a connected group of computers that has storage somewhere. And when you save a file to the cloud, your file is uploaded to a computer somewhere that you're never going to see. You have no idea where it is. You just know that you can access it and get to it when you need to, which of course is very good. But if you can imagine lots of humans that have integrated technology and AI inside themselves, they become a cloud of their own. They become interconnected together. And that, of course, is quite a concerning place for technology to move. And this is what's starting to happen now. So AI as it stands today, the way that we see things, can be used in a very positive way by the right type of conversations with it and with the right understanding and programming. But we're concerned, and we're raising the flag, that obviously you need to be conscious about your choices and how you integrate and how you allow AI to change your life, because of course it will change your life. It will change the face of humanity. It's already changing things on the planet, and the incorporation with robotics will make it a very interesting place to go. So I think from my perspective, that was the conversation that I really wanted to have. There's another form of AI, of course. So we have spiritual AI. And all of you that are Spirit Release Academy practitioners know that we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, that's incorporated into people's etheric fields. So there is this level of AI that's self-replicating. So a bit like a human virus. You know that when you catch a cold, if you sit in a room with someone that's sneezing, that has the effects of a cold, you're likely to catch that particular cold. And then you start to sneeze and feel slightly dejected and tired. And then, of course, if you're around other people, so it spreads. Well, of course, there are AI parasitic vibratory frequencies that are infecting people's etheric fields, and those are self-replicating, so they move from one person to another, and they bring down your vibration. They can obviously change the way that you start to think, change the things that you start to do. They do have a conscious connection into you from a spiritual perspective. And again, this spiritual AI has evolved over the last few years. I know that when I was working with young Terence, so back in 2020, we didn't really identify AI as a spiritual virus, really. It wasn't really found in people's etheric fields, whereas now most people seem to have some effects or some etheric AI vibrations in their field. And of course, these are negative. They're not particularly positive, and they do spread from one person to another. It's something that we need to consider. Where did that come from, and how is that now starting to manipulate the human conscious awareness? And what we're interested, of course, in is vibration. As all of you know that listen to us on a regular basis, our job really is to increase the vibration of planet Earth. And we do that by clearing negative vibrations and frequencies from people's fields. So we perform what we call clearings, spiritual clearings, on people's etheric field, and we detach and remove entities, earthbounds, those sorts of things. We clear AI, we clear parasites, so interdimensional parasites, we look for portals. There's a whole list of things, and all of the spirit release practitioners are very aware of the training program that they go through to identify and remove and clear those things. So when we clear a person, after that intervention, their frequency of vibration rises dramatically. And of course, that changes them, it changes the planet, it changes where they walk, it changes their family. So it has a very positive impact. And that's part of my role and the team that I work with. We're all here to help humanity rise the vibration and therefore raise the ultimate vibration of your species, and then, of course, of planet Earth. And that moves and ascends your species and also other species into a very different frequency. But the negative side, of course, is counteracting that. It's working in a negative way. And this is where we've seen this negative AI come into people's fields from an etheric perspective. So whilst you've got your programmed physical AI in your computer systems and your devices, there is the same thing happening from a spiritual perspective. And of course, those two things must be connected together because they've come out at the same time. So that means from our perspective that there are probably other entities, other species of entity that are behind a lot of this AI. And of course, they know what they're doing, and they're giving people and humanity the tools to use AI, but they're obviously directing it at the moment in a benign way. It's not really being controlled, we don't think, primarily, because of course a lot of the information that you can work with AI bots is particularly good. But of course, this is what tends to happen, is that you give the tools, and then you start to, when people get used to using the tools, you start to control and obviously push the path that you want them to go in. And this is where the group of energies that I work with and myself are very keen to highlight what's going on behind the scenes in these sorts of conversations, just so you all start to think about what is happening from a spiritual perspective and overlay that into the conscious perspective of your physical life, the things that you buy, the devices that you're using. So hopefully you find this conversation interesting. Hopefully there are many questions that are coming up, because by having these conversations, what we're keen to do is we're keen to raise questions or make you think about questions in your mind. We're keen to push the buttons to have the conversation, not to say that there's right answers to anything. Two different people will have two different opinions. One person would think that AI is a really positive thing and can be used to push humanity forward in a positive way. Another person would see it as a negative thing and would suggest that it's taking humanity backward, back into a prison cell. And of course, both of those narratives are correct for different people. So we're not here to give you the rights or the wrongs. We're here to float the conversation. Let's start having a conversation about AI, because it's the most prominent conversation on the planet today. It's something that we're concerned around, certainly, and we want you to start thinking about. And I know that I will be encouraging young Andrew, and of course young Jane too, to start to bring some of these AI-based questions and narratives into the social media questioning, the social media conversations, the social media reels and such like that are being pushed out. So people start to think, because you do need to understand where that path is going, and there certainly is a divergence in paths, and those two paths are diverging already from our perspective. And of course, the younger generation tend to be more IT and tech led, because of course it's their generation, whereas older people tend not to be IT and tech led, and therefore tend to be able to deliberate in a much better way. Generally, they think about things in a bigger way, they look at things in a different way. A younger person will see something they can use, something that's funny or interesting, or a game that they're interested in, and they're willing to give away part of their own conscious awareness to play these games or connect with other people playing the games. But of course, they're not looking at where that will take them from a spiritual perspective, disconnecting them from the planet, from each other, from humanity as a species. So this is a very interesting time, and AI is the hot topic, which is why we wanted to basically float that into your conscious awareness today. So with that, I will say good day to you all. Hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation. I'll be interested to see the comments and to have my communication with young Andrew and Jane afterwards, which is what we always tend to do. We have a group meeting where we talk about the conversation, what's being said, what people think. Obviously, we're interested to know your comments too. So please let us know your comments. And from that perspective, obviously, I know that young Andrew is running the new course. They have a new spiritual development course that starts in July. And of course, we are behind the scenes hosting that, and we're helping to develop people. And we want to help people develop from a spiritual perspective, because this is part of our job spiritually, is to help you connect to your guides, to move yourself forward from a spiritual perspective, but in a safe place. And spiritual development can be quite a dangerous area to be walking if you're not working with the right teachers, and not really the teachers primarily. It's who's teaching the teachers is the question. So when you're working with spiritual influence and spirit guides, it doesn't really matter if the teacher says the right things. Do they have connections, to the right intuitive aspect, to the right core conscious awareness? Are they working from a place of integrity and higher love? Or are they being manipulated in the things they do and say? And these are the sorts of questions all of you need to think about when you engage on your spiritual adventures and journeys. So I will say good day to you all, and I will look forward to next week's conversation. Good day. Okay, so I'm back. So time is, Chen's not even used all this time. 1 minute 46 to go. That's quite good. I think that's about the third week in a row now. Chen's been early on the conversation. So he's starting to learn about time, which is good. So I'm going to read some of the comments just as we go back. Suki's saying interesting comment. Geraldine's talking about LED light bulbs. Okay, which is interesting. I think, yeah, because LEDs flicker basically. And I think when you put them on, certainly when I've done podcasts before, sometimes when you play them back, Geraldine, you can see the flickering happening. And of course, that's not very good for our eyes, because even though our eyes don't see the flicker, there is obviously a flicker that you can see and look at on camera or on photography. So again, if we kind of go back in time, I think, so the kind of old light bulbs were better for us from a kind of visual and eye-based perspective, I think, than LEDs, even though LEDs obviously use a tenth of the power, cost less to run, that type of thing. The actual light waves they give off isn't particularly good for us, particularly. And I guess if those, with myself now looking at an LED screen, we're all looking at huge big monitors all day that are LEDs that are flickering, even though we can't see the flicker. So I think, again, just sort of having a little think about some of the things we have around us, obviously makes a big difference to how we feel. And people that are being distracted or have EMF sensitivity or headaches, those sorts of things, just maybe think about putting like a normal light bulb in your room, remove the LED stuff if you can, go back to normal light bulbs, even though they cost more. The light tends to be better. And of course, they're giving off the wavelengths of light, whereas LEDs are in a very small band of light frequency, is my kind of understanding. Geraldine's talking about false information. I know it's like the Wild West these days. I think when I was 20 years ago, there wasn't really any opportunity to have spiritual conversations, really, because it was buy books, read books at home, go to an event, speak to someone. That was the only way you can actually get any kind of spiritual conversations. Whereas now, of course, with the internet and AI bots and all the other things, you can have all these conversations, but you don't really know who knows what they're talking about, and it's trying to find people you trust. And I think this is the big problem, really, in the spiritual world. I've been doing spiritual things for 20 years, and I know a lot of people that work in the kind of spiritual fields, and some of them I trust and some of them I probably don't trust, really. So again, it is a bit like the Wild West. You have to try and find who resonates with you, listen to what they say, look at their life. If you know their lives, do they do the things they say? Which is what I always I think it was Chen's biggest teaching to me, really, was, when you're talking to people and you're following people, try and follow people that do what they say. Not, there's plenty of people that tell you kind of what to do, but they don't do it themselves. So try and follow people that actually live with the right intention and say and do the right things and kind of authentic. And I guess authenticity is the key, certainly in the spiritual area. But there's a whole lot of people that present as authentic, and when you get to know them, you realize they're kind of not as authentic as they'd like their kind of followers to think they are, really, which does bring that question up. But then that's part of the path. If you follow someone and they take you down the wrong path, you do get to learn things, and it kind of becomes part of your own spiritual compass, I think I tend to call it, really. And the only way you kind of align your spiritual compass is siding with or following the wrong people at times, and then kind of coming back and realizing that wasn't really the path for you, trying to find different people that resonate with you that you actually trust. So it kind of is, it's all part of our spiritual lessons, part of our spiritual development and path. Sometimes it can just obviously shape years off our life as we go around a circle, rather than walking forward. We're kind of spinning in a circle and not really. So Jane's just saying thanks to all those that are watching on YouTube. Yep, of course we've got YouTube. So there's a whole load of channels now. We're also kind of, these podcasts are being popped onto Spotify, onto Amazon and Apple too. So a lot of this information hopefully is available in more places. Again, we have lots of people asking us, saying they don't really do socials, or they're not very keen on Facebook. how can they kind of listen to us and find out some of this information from Chen in different ways. So we kind of have listened to those asks really over the last few months and put quite a bit of time and effort into finding out how we do, broadcast across Spotify and other things, which we're now doing. So all of these podcasts get kind of amended, changed, and then we do pop them onto YouTube and other places. So hopefully there's a wider audience that gets to find that. And if you guys know people that are interested or would be interested in the things that we're talking about, or Chen, then I'd quite appreciate you guys sharing. And again, on our social media stuff, if you like and comment, kind of really helps. Because ultimately, it's kind of what we're doing. We're putting our time and effort into doing these things so that Chen can get his kind of spiritual message out to more and more people. And we get more people to be like us and like you guys that are listening. So we want people that are kind of high vibrating, forward thinking, sort of spiritual people. But to do that, of course, we need to be sharing information. We need to share channels, and comments and likes are a good way to do it. And of course, the YouTube channels are good too. And Jane's taking the credit for Spotify because that was her idea, which it was. I said, Spotify, what another thing to do? Because we were trying to do Spotify, we were trying to do Facebook, Instagram, and then Twitter came up, or X as it's now called, which I couldn't really see the point of. So I thought, X, you only can write a very small number of characters. So I didn't really see the point of doing really Twitter, but we are on Twitter. We do post stuff on there. So we kind of try and do that. And then, of course, Spotify was the next idea, or brainwaves that Jane had. So that took a bit of time and effort to collate a lot of videos. And I think we've now probably got 30 odd videos or something on there. Well, not videos, but they're audio podcasts, things Chen's talking about. There's a whole load of content on Spotify and Apple, that kind of thing. Geraldine's laughing. Jane gives me another. I know, I've got two people in my life, Geraldine, that give me things to do. Chen's got a continual list that never ever ends, basically, and there's just more things that goes on there, really. And Jane's also got a never-ending list of things that we're doing and or selling or making or trying to help people with. And so it could be said that we're kept very busy by spirit, really. But then that's what we're here for. We're here to kind of work. We both love what we do. We're both very fortunate that our full-time job is doing this work and connecting with Chen and working from a spiritual perspective. So we kind of know that we're very lucky. We obviously work from home, which is good, and we choose the hours that we work. So what tends to happen is we work twice as many hours as normal. So when I had my normal job, I used to go off at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning, come back at 6, and that was my day done. Whereas now we're up at sort of 7ish, 7:30, and sometimes I'm still on podcast or teaching or running training courses until sort of 9:30, 10 p.m. at night. So suddenly the day seems to have got exceedingly long, really. Not that I'm complaining, because it's what we choose to do, but certainly from that perspective, there is, I'm working from the caravan, Geraldine, yeah. So even when we go away, we're still working because there's still things to do. But, we're very fortunate, and we kind of know that we're quite lucky to do that. And certainly, as Chen reminds me, it is what we agreed to do. So we do have to kind of honour that agreement from a spiritual perspective. So it's all good. Anyway, folks, I hope you've enjoyed the chat. I'm going to bring this to an end now because we're more or less on the hour. I think it's 57 minutes, which is good. Hopefully it's been fun. You've enjoyed it. Again, any questions, you can drop us questions or contact us via email. So contact@andy-porter.co.uk. Obviously, we've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter /X, and obviously Spotify, YouTube, and any other channels that Jane thinks about that we need. We'll have 2 at some point, quite soon, no doubt. So I'll sign off, say goodbye, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers, folks. Bye-bye.